Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to a brand new episode of Full Sim Ahead. I'm your host, Zoe, co-host Stebby, and co-host Cantu is not with us for tonight. But hey, show must go on because the winter meetings are just around the corner. It will start on Monday. And of course, when it comes to these winter meetings, a lot of things happen. You see a lot of signings, a lot of trades. Obviously, if you're a Houston Astros fan, you kept up with the team last season. You saw that trade happen the day after the winter meetings where Dana Brown sent all-star Kyle Tucker to the Chicago Cubs and then receiving Cam Smith, Isaac Paredes, and Hayden Wesneski. So hopefully everybody had a great Thanksgiving break and was able to gobble up some turkey, some ham, some stuffing, green beans, everything like that. Hopefully everybody was thankful for something, being around friends and family. But a lot of stuff to get into. Obviously, the Astros just recently signed a KBO starter from the KBO League. So that was an interesting signing for Houston. The objectives are right there on the side for you. We'll have some pre-winter meeting talks talking about what the Astros are going to do, what their needs looking into and heading into Orlando, Florida. Some trade, Astros trade, rumor mill is always right there. And then especially a great time for the winter meetings to see who is going to be dealt, who's going to be staying and all that great stuff. Of course, some draft pick assets. Astros were able to pick up the number 28 pick in this upcoming draft. So really good for Houston to pick up some draft assets. And of course, with Framber Valdez, if he decides to sign anywhere else, the Astros will get a draft pick out of that. So Houston and a lot of the fans know, if you've been keeping up with the Astros desperately need some picks to strengthen up their farm system. And last but not least, SCHN Plus. What does that mean? Well, Space City Home Network. Finally, I would say for Houston, well, the city of Houston and just Houston sports fans in general, they finally get to see a platform and app where they could find their favorite teams regarding at least the Rockets and the Astros. I think that's pretty cool because I think when you're on the road, you're not at home. You're like I said, on the road, your son or your daughter's practice, or just busy at work. I mean, look, you could tune into the app and don't have any restrictions or anything like that. But we'll talk about a little bit more how that became into spring. But before we get started, and at the bottom, of course, our little ticker right there, where you can find us, where you can look and search for us on social media. We're there on TikTok, Full Steam Ahead, as well as Twitter, FSA Full Steam Ahead, on Instagram. And of course, the YouTube channel is right there in that corner, Full Steam Ahead. And if you're looking on Twitter, majority of our crowd comes from Twitter. Make sure you go to YouTube and hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you will not miss any of the content that will be coming from December. We got a lot coming up in January. Obviously, from February to March, we got the Baseball World Classic heading at Dyken Park, as well as spring training interviews, stuff like that. That's going to be coming in real soon. It's just going to hear in a snap of a finger. It's going to be here before you know it. So make sure you tune in and hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of them interviews or any other content. And as well, on the other side of the corner, you got our Spotify, our Apple Podcasts. Wherever you get your podcasts, we are there. Like, rate, subscribe, hit some feedback, hit some stars. We appreciate each and every one. Shout out to Astros Nowhere being able to show out what his podcast standings looks like, and that is pretty cool. And being able to see the show be up there, of course, with Crush City Territory with Channel Rome, as well as the Astros podcast, and of course, Locked On Astros, H-Town Wheelhouse, I know. So, of course, getting his aspect and his other co-host getting the aspect of Astros knowledge, and they also have some good interviews. So shout out to them. Shout out to all the other Astros podcasts out there that's keeping it down for Houston. But the biggest news for Houston was signing another starter, and this was an interesting one because Houston so far has only signed one, and that is Nate Pearson. And what they're looking at him is to be a starter, having that opportunity to go out there at spring training and try to show them that he's capable of starting into this rotation, this upcoming new season. And this is, like I said, this is what's very interesting because you hardly see Houston go out and sign any KBO stars or even go across the country to even look and some scouting some stars like that. And sure enough, Houston lands an agreement per Brian McTaggart. Astros have agreed to a deal with right-handed pitcher Ryan Weiss, pending a physical. He pitched the last 2 years in Korea and will be a starter. The deal was a major league contract. So just like Nate Pearson, this contract is also going to be major league, not a minor league contract. And just add on to the money situation. This is coming from Jesse Rogers of ESPN. The deal guarantees Weiss $2.6 million in 2026. Has an option for 2027 that came from Chandler Rome. That will be a club option, not a player option. And Weiss could make over $10 million in the 2 years. I'm very interested to see if there's any incentives in this. Like if there's, when it comes to incentives, if he reaches the inning mark, or as well as strikeouts, all-star game, all them things come into place. That just helps the player get a little bit more money in their pocket. But his numbers weren't bad in the KBO league, only playing 2 seasons there from 24 and 25. He did play in China's baseball league in 2023. So he's been across the country for quite some time. And his numbers with the Hanwha Eagles in the last 2 seasons weren't bad. 21-10 record, 270 innings and a third pitch, 3.16 ERA, 1.07 whip, 305 strikeouts. And I like this one right here. The strikeout per 9 innings is really well balanced. 10.2 strikeout per 9 innings percentage. So knowing that he's going to get a lot of whiffs, going to get a lot of swing and misses. Of course, coming into some counts, 3-2, 0-2, 1-2, try to get him away with that put away pitch. We'll talk about the arsenal here in just a second. But in 2025, regarding in last season, 30 starts, 16-5 record, 178.2 innings pitched, 2.87 ERA, 56 walks, 207 strikeouts. And then another interesting stat that I wanted to point out is the ground ball rate. Of course, Houston's losing a big ground ball pitcher in Framber Valdez. Well, you kind of need to strengthen a little bit of that and being able to keep the ball on the ground and not in the air. Of course, the Crawford boxes in left field is very hitter friendly for any opposing players, and even including the Astros. So his ground ball rate isn't really bad. This is around Hunter Brown. When you look at Framber Valdez on Baseball Savant, it's like a 59.2%. And if you go back to 24, it was like a 61%. Well, Weiss's ground ball rate is a 48.5%. And the other season prior in 24, it was at 48.2. So fairly, he keeps the ball on the ground. That's a good sign for, and especially with the defense that he has behind him with a bunch of Gold Glovers in Pena. You got Correa at third, as well as Christian Walker. Jose Altuve has a Gold Glove in his resume. And Isaac Paredes had a really good defensive season, I would say, in the corners. So this will help him even more. Hunter Brown, reminding everybody, had a 48.1% ground ball rate last season. And for Weiss, I think this is great for him because he's going to have a defense behind him that's very strong, that's going to be able to support him, has the range. You saw Jeremy Pena's range in shortstop. Of course, everybody knows Carlos Correa's range, and the arm is just the cherry on top with him. And it is just going to be still interesting to see what second base is going to look like. Is Jose Altuve going to be starting majority of the games there? Or is Isaac Paredes going to pivot to second base as well? And, just to add on with Christian Walker, we'll have to see if Paredes does play at first base. But Walker, of course, has some great defensive resume, being a 3-time Gold Glover at the other corner. But the arsenal, let's talk about that, because this is where I think the ground ball rate percentage helps him a lot. Fastball, about 94, 95 averages. The curveball is about 79 to 81%. Sweeper, 85 to 87. I don't know why I said percent on the curveball. My mistake, miles per hour. And his splitter, 89 to 91 miles per hour. For me personally, I love the splitter. The splitter and the sinker have great movement. It can either go different directions, and especially when you could throw I wouldn't say that's a high velocity splitter, but it is really up there. We do have a video of Weiss here in the KBO, one of his starts. Obviously right there, that's a curveball, being 82 miles per hour. Let's see what pitch is this one. Sweeper right there, 87. And of course, everybody gets confused with the sweeper and the slider. It's really almost the same movement, but obviously the sweeper has a little bit more horizontal break on the pitch. Of course, right there, curveball, not to mention. Let's see what this pitch is, a curveball. So being able to work with, I think Josh Miller's going to have some fun working with this guy. Like I said, the defense is going to be behind him, having a ground ball right there, curveball right there. And I'm pretty sure there could be a possibility of adding another pitch if he's very comfortable with the idea. But seeing what he already had brought in that start, I'm very excited to see what he looks like. That video right there was brought to you from Very Happy Astros on X. I had saw it. Uh, I thought that was a really good video to put on here since that was his start in the KBO league. But with these starters, you've seen this with Pearson. You've seen it with another signing in Weiss. I'm still firm that this is not the end of it for the Astros. This is not their goal of signing starting pitcher. Of course, starting pitching is the number one priority, but this is not the two guys that they're going to roll with into the season. It could be, but my prediction, I do not think there's going to be one more starter. However, it's going to be difficult for Houston to try to find a starter, like a top-end starter. You can still go get Michael King. I think Michael King is a very valuable option that Houston can go after, and that is not very expensive. Maybe they could get him on a year or two. I could say 3 is the max. I think Spot Track had that as a prediction. If I'm not mistaken, it was like a 3-year, $75 million contract. And Houston, of course, is not the type of team to give out contracts that is 6 and plus. They're not going to give you the big contracts. We saw Dylan Cease the other day. We didn't get to mention it on the last podcast, but Dylan Cease signed $210 million for 6 years with the Toronto Blue Jays. I think that's a great gift for the Blue Jays because after honestly getting 2 more outs to win a World Series and being able to not win it in Toronto, that obviously hurts them a lot, but they're making some big moves. They also, not to mention, signed I don't have his first name on the top of my head, but I do have his last name, Ponce, from the KBO as well. So you're seeing some KBO guys get out. Of course, the Japanese players and pitchers are going to be on the market for some teams. I would like to see Houston to get in that market, but I just don't see it happening for Houston. Though, going back to what I was saying, they're still going to go get a number 2 and number 3 starter. It just doesn't seem like this is it for Houston. I like the moves for them regarding and getting some depth in this pitching depth, I would say, because you can use Wise in the bullpen. He has some experience pitching in the bullpen, as well as Pearson. He has experience pitching in the bullpen. If it doesn't go, it doesn't go well for him to start some games and he's struggling starting, so you move him to the bullpen. He has that experience. And the same thing goes for Wise. Of course, let's talk a little bit more because I do got some information on him. Wright State alum. If I'm not mistaken, Hunter Brown also went to Wright State. So, hey, you got 2 guys that went over there. And he's going to turn 29 on December 10, just not too far away, 7 days. If you're listening to this the next morning, it's going to be 6 days. But he was drafted by the Arizona Diamondbacks in the 4th round of the 2018 draft. Spent some time with the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Kansas City Royals before he decided to go overseas and pitch with China and in the KBO, which is the Korean League. 132 career minor league games between Arizona and Kansas City. 47 starts, like I mentioned, pitched in China in 2023. I think this was a fun, interesting factoid of knowing this guy's nickname. I'm trying to figure out if it's going to come over here to Houston, see how Astro fans are going to play with that. But the Eagles play in Daejeon. I hope I'm saying this right. Not fumble the bag. Daejeon, South Korea. The fans over there, Eagles fans, call him Daejeon Jesus. Obviously, you see the hair flow on this guy, and I'll pull the video out if you just missed it just recently. You can see some flow on the back of his hair. Of course, if you go to his Instagram, there's some pictures of his starts, some videos of his starts as well. He has the flow. He even kind of has the look of Jesus. So I thought that was a pretty cool nickname. I think that could stick over here in Houston for some Astro fans if they want to run along with it. But if you were just missing and you're just barely tuning in, we're talking about the arsenal that this guy brings. He has a 4-seam fastball. You're seeing the curveball mix right there. That exact pitch was a sweeper fastball right there. And he also has a splitter. And like I was telling everybody, I think a splitter and sinker combo are really nice. Of course, you're adding a changeup. The changeup and splitter have different speeds and different movements on their pitches. Obviously, the splitter is a little bit more faster, as well as the changeup is a little bit more slower. So I just do like this guy's arsenal. And like I was mentioning earlier, I think Josh Miller being able to work with him, I think this is going to be a really great addition for Houston. I think it's going to be a great position for Miller and Weiss to see what they could work on, how they can improve, what pitches they could look into gaining a little bit more, because I don't have the percentage. Usually Baseball Savant gives you how much percentage and how many times a pitch is thrown from certain pitchers. I would think the curveball and that fastball is going to be up there. I would say too, the sweeper. It'd be interesting if Miller would tell him, hey, let's see if we could throw that splitter. It's just like in 2024 when the Astros brought in Yusei Kikuchi. They saw a lot of success in his changeup. He wasn't throwing the changeup a lot with, at the time, it was with the Toronto Blue Jays. And the Astros saw something with that pitch. They're like, you know what? You come to you, and we traded for you. We saw something in you. We saw something in that arsenal that you present. And we believe that this changeup that you present in your arsenal is a really great pitch. A lot of the opponent batting average, a lot of hitters struggle with the pitch. It was like a $150, $170, if I'm not mistaken. And sure enough, I mean, the ERA, and when Astro fans saw when Kikuchi was coming to Houston, I would even say myself, I was in the press box when that happened. I didn't think that was the smartest and the biggest trade, because I felt like Houston gave up a little bit more to bring in a rental with Kikuchi, because Houston wasn't going to re-sign him after that season. So what he did with that changeup, it just made him a better pitcher. Obviously, you saw how that ended at the end of the season. Wentz had gone and signed with the Los Angeles Angels, and the rest is history for him. But that second half of the season for him helped him a lot, being able to get that contract with the Angels, and just being able to know that, hey, you got that confidence in that pitch. You have that pitch that's going to help you in some big-time situations, getting a ground ball if needed, and all that type of stuff. So that's why I think bringing in Weiss, it's not a real, jaw-dropping move. It's really not. But the potential is there. You've seen the success that Dana Brown has done in his time with Houston, signing some guys to some minor league contracts. Of course, Taylor Scott's one of them that comes into mind, as well as some others. And they do really well with the Astros. There's always something. Of course, I think it's going to hurt that Bill Murphy's not here with Houston anymore. That was more of the analytical, statistical kind of guy that would look into the game planning and try to see what pitches really mix well and here and there. But don't discriminate Josh Miller. I think Miller's going to do a really good job bringing in Weiss and seeing what they can do better. I'm pretty sure Dana Brown, Joe Espada, they had if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure, I'm just speculating, I would think they would have a talk with Weiss and say, hey, this is why we brought you. We like what you have on this certain pitch. We love your stuff. Certain situations, all that type of stuff. When it comes to pitching, it's a game plan. And your pitchers and catchers always would talk with one another, and as well as your pitching coaches, trying to figure out what's the best way to attack a hitter. What's the best way to go in against a lefty? What's the best way going against a righty? What certain spots are cold for this particular batter? So that's the beauty of this game, baseball, that we call it. And I think, like I said, the Astros are not done. This was a great move just to add some depth in this rotation, because now you have Hunter Brown. We're still got Christian Javier in this rotation. You still got Spencer Rigetti. Lance McCullers Jr. still is on that contract. Now you add a David Weiss. You have Nate Pearson. And then you still got some prospects that can still, potentially show out. AJ Blueball was a good, to me, I think he's a really good candidate headed into spring training to earn a starting rotation spot for this Houston team. Of course, Miguel Ulola, I don't think he's going to be in there. I mean, he could surprise some people. We saw Dana Brown do that with Cam Smith last year, but I think Ulola is going to be more of a mid-season call-up. I think he's a really good pitcher. Of course, you saw the Astros pick him up in the Rule 5 draft, and they weren't going to, get him out. So that's what the starting pitching market looks like for Houston as a team right now. However, let's move on to the pre-winter meeting, since we're talking about pitching. And for me, like I mentioned, the Astros need a reliable 2 or 3 starter in this rotation. This is not the end. This is not Pearson and Weiss are not the guys that the Astros like, you know what? Clean my hands. This is it. We're good. We're ready to go for 2026. I disagree with that, because you have a number 1 guy. You definitely need a number 2 pitcher. And Christian Javier, unless he revamps up and, has a really good offseason preparing into spring training and no miss hiccups or hurdles or anything like that, yeah, he could be a number 2 guy. But I think there's some better pitchers in the market, free agency, if you want to go through there, if you want to go in via trade. I think there's still some great options for Houston to look at. I believe Sonny Gray was a really good fit for Houston, but you saw how Gray went to Boston and joined them. I think that's going to be a really good that's a really good rotation right there. 1-2 with Garrett Crochet and Sonny Gray. Of course, you still got Brian Bay over there, as well as some other youngsters, and they got some good prospects. So you're going to see that. But going back to the trade market, Freddie Peralta's out there. I don't think the Astros have enough when it comes to other teams putting out some trades. The Astros farm system isn't the strongest. Everybody knows that. Always ranked 28, 29, 30, 27, 26. I mean, it's not strong. We're going to be reasonable right here. It's not a very strong farm system. However, Houston always develops really good players. You saw it with Jacob Melton. You've seen it with Zach Cole. Cam Smith, of course, still young. As soon as he got traded, he's already playing in the majors. But Miguel Ulola, I mean, we can go throughout the history of the farm that the Astros present. Of course, they're not like 5-star recruits. I'm just going to say it like that. But they're like 2-star, 3-star hidden gems out there that have the hustle, have the grind, have the hard work, all that, what it takes to be able to come to this MLB level. And that's why I believe that the Astros, when it comes to trading for pitching, the packages aren't going to be really eye-popping. It's regarding prospects, unless they got MLB-ready players now. And we'll talk about the MLB-ready guys in here just a second. Though the potential trade targets for Houston, you can still look at Mitch Keller from the Pirates. Peralta is going to be an interesting one. Of course, Minnesota right now, nobody knows what's going to happen with Joe Ryan as well as Pablo Lopez. Of course, we can go down to the 305 in Miami with Sandy Alcantara, as well as Edward Cabrera. And if anybody, and if I'm not mistaken, I had read this in an article that the Marlins are more lenient of trading Cabrera opposed to Alcantara. But of course, you won't know until, like I said, these baseball winter meetings are going to be coming. You already had the GM winter meetings. MLB baseball winter meetings is when the agents, the players even go out there, represent themselves sometimes, as well as the general managers are out there. So it's almost the same thing as the GM, but obviously it's a little bit more broader. It's a little bit more hectic, speculation, rumors, all that great stuff. So it's going to be very fun to hear what's going through that. Though, like I was saying, the trade market might be the best spot for Houston to go after a starting pitcher. If you really try to get a guy like Ranger Suarez, which I really think Suarez would fit in well with this club, I just do not see it happening. I believe it could happen, but it's going to be very difficult to do that, especially after Dylan Cease signed for $210 million. That's starting the pitching market. And we've always preached in this show, starting pitching and just pitching in general, relievers, closers, setup guys, it's going to be a high demand. Everybody's looking for pitching. Everybody from Boston to Los Angeles to New York to Chicago to Houston. Everybody's going to be looking for starting pitching. So what is Houston going to bring in these trades? Like I was mentioning, they really don't have a lot of strong prospects to put out there. The money is almost the same situation. They don't have a lot of money when it comes to, the threshold and going over the CBT. Jim Crane does not want to go over the CBT because obviously there goes a tax and percentage of how much he has to pay back. So for Houston, that's why you're seeing these moves from Brown and the front office of seeing what kind of pitchers are out there that they can get for a low bargain. And sure enough, that's been Pearson so far and Weiss. Pearson was like a 1-point-something million deal. Weiss was a 2.6 million. So for me, you were able to trade Mauricio Dubon. You did save some money because if you didn't get to see that, Dubon signed and avoided arbitration for $6.1 million. Houston was not going to give him $6 million, especially another utility guy. Of course, a fan favorite. Like I've mentioned in the other podcast episode. If you haven't seen that one, it's on our YouTube page. So they're trying to save some money. They're trying to find some way. And how can they do that? It's by doing this as well. Could Houston be trading any of their players on their roster? Of course, there's been some names already out there. Jake Meyers has been one. Another one recently came out with Jesús Sánchez. And I think that was surprising to everybody, was seeing Jesús Sánchez get his contract tendered by the Astros. That doesn't necessarily mean Sánchez is going to be with Houston on opening day roster. That could still be the possibility, but he's getting and garnering a lot of trade interest from other teams because other teams see potential in this kid. He's still young. He still has a lot of power. He has some contact. Of course, the fielding, if you were a Nationals fan and you did see the second half of the season of Sanchez, the fielding defensive miscues were just not there, wasn't very strong. Of course, the offense wasn't there. It was inconsistent, a lot of strikeouts. You did see some hot flashes of him, have some multi-hit games, a hitting streak as well. Though they need a guy that's going to be consistent. Even Dana Brown had mentioned with Cam Smith. He has to be consistent if he's going to want to stay in the MLB ready level. If he's going to be in the Major League roster, he's going to be patrolling right field, he has to be consistent. And the same thing goes for Sanchez. And we can say too, like I was saying, Meyers, Sanchez, prospects could also be in the deals like I was mentioning earlier when it comes to these trade packages. Yes, Houston doesn't have a strong farm system, but I did mention that they develop really great players through their player development. Zach Cole could be a name. I'm not saying he's going to get traded, but these are some names that I'm pretty sure some teams are looking at when it comes to trying to get better, especially for outfield. A lot of teams have been calling for outfield coming from John Morosi from MLB Network. Zach Cole, Jacob Melton, Colton Gordon. And then you look at the prospects as in Anderson Brito. Brito had a really great Arizona Fall League. If I'm not mistaken, he made the All-Star team as well with Walker Yannick. So that kind of helps and boosts his number up if Houston wants to try to trade him. He is the number one pitching prospect in the Astros farm system right now. He is number 7 on the farm system rankings, unless they had switched up a little bit. And then Ryan Furcucci, I think he's a really interesting name. He was MLB's 86 prospect out of the top 100s when he got drafted in 2023. However, he was dealing with a bunch of injuries. If I'm not mistaken, I don't have it right in front of me. I believe he had Tommy John surgery before he started pitching for the Astros in their system. So those are some names that you can look at. I'm pretty sure that there's some teams looking at those players. If they're looking at MLB ready player now, you're more than likely going to look at Jake Meyers. You're obviously going to see Jesús Sánchez be up there. But if you want to just strengthen your farm system, if they see something in these pitchers, these players, then they're going to ask some interest. I know there was a lot of interest at the MLB trade deadline when it came to Walker Yannick. Another guy like Spencer Arrighetti. Of course, San Diego was a team that wanted Arrighetti if the Astros were going to get Dylan Cease. So this is the fun part about MLB winter meetings. It's the speculation. It's the rumors. It's like you're playing. It's like you're putting your GM hat on. Of course, when Angel, when Stebby, and when myself talk about these trades, what are some finding ways that Houston could get better with their roster? What trades can we try to do? Of course, when we do it, it just looks like shit. I'm gonna be honest with you, but we do try and put our GM hats on. So this was interesting to me, and I feel 100% before we get to the Astros rumor mill that Jake Meyers is going to be traded before 2026. I will be shocked if Meyers is going to be on the roster, because Jake, if everybody remembered, had a really good offensive season until that calf strain really bothered him in that second half of the season. He's a great defender in center field, can patrol. If you really want to put him in the corners, I'm pretty sure he can play the corners, but he is a great center fielder, has a lot of range. You've seen the outs above average, Gold Glove finalist, if I'm not mistaken, in 2024. So he presents a high value when teams are asking for him. And not to mention, too, he still got some arbitration years. So if we go and see and read this real quick, if Meyers gets traded, who will patrol center field? And Brian McTaggart did mention that in his article before the winter meetings. And it had mentioned the Astros are ready to see if prospects Jacob Melton and or Zach Cole can handle the job in center field. Center field is a tough position. It's like shortstop. Shortstop, you are the captain of the infield. Really, you're the captain of the whole field. Same goes for center field. Center field gets to call off the left fielder and gets to call off the right fielder if it has a better angle. Of course, you got to back up your left fielder. You got to back up the right fielder when it comes to playing balls off the wall. And of course, you have to have a strong arm, which honestly, this is just my opinion. Jake doesn't have a very strong arm, but he does back it up with great defense and great range. And that's why I feel firmly believing that Houston will deal Jake Meyers because they already see Zach Cole with that little second. That last month was when he got brought up in September or late August, and he teared the ball. He has some great bat speed. He got some incredible power. Of course, the strikeouts is a little high, but what do you expect from a prospect? What do you expect from a guy coming from the minor leagues? Remember, he started in Double A. He started in Corpus Christi, made his way up to Triple A, had a really great experience in Sugarland, tearing the ball. If I'm not mistaken, his Triple A average was like almost over 500 or over 400 for sure. And he was terrorizing the ball. And Dana Brown, when it comes to seeing that, he wants to bring up the hot hand. And sure enough, he was the hot hand. And he did play really well in the offensive aspect. He has played some good defense in center field as well. And of course, Jacob Melton, we've talked about him. He's a really great defender. Really, you can put him in the corners and you can put him in center field. He presents a lot of great range. The arm as well is not bad. It's pretty decent. And he's a contact hitter, not a very known for his power, but he does got some excellent speed and base and really the aggressiveness on the base paths. So them two guys, I wouldn't say Houston is looking to platoon. That is more than likely going to be a job come to spring training. Who's going to want that position? Because the Astros have done that already with Chas McCormick, and they've done that with Jake Meyers in center field. They platoon him for a good 3 years. I think Houston wants to set themselves with a startable center fielder that can just go out there and play every day at center field instead of a platoon. That's just my opinion. One of them guys could be dealt, or one or both them guys can be in the roster, and one could be in AAA as the other one's starting. So a lot of things to look into when it comes to center field. And this is coming from Ken Rosenthal. We're going to the Astros rumor mill. And Katie Woo, this is coming from The Athletic for Jake Meyers. It says here, the Astros are actively shopping center fielder Jake Meyers as they look to bolster their rotation. Meyers, entering his age 30 season, is under club control for 2 years and projected to earn $3.5 million in 2026 via arbitration. Like I was mentioning, that arbitration number more than likely is going to go up. Back to the quote. Houston is seeking a controllable major league starter in return, according to sources. And then they added on to the article that some teams that are interested in Jake would be the Philadelphia Phillies, the New York Mets, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Baltimore Orioles, as well as the Arizona Diamondbacks and the Kansas City Royals. Kansas City, when you think of pitching, they got Chris Bubic over there. Cole Reagans, I don't think Houston's going to get him. That is a former All-Star, pitched really well when he is healthy. So I highly doubt that. Chris Bubic, though, that could be an interesting name Houston could look at. However, how is that going to look like coming in the return? Of course, the package of what is looking at. Diamondbacks. Brandon Pfaadt is like a name that I like, but Arizona is not going to give up for him because he is a really good young pitcher. The Baltimore Orioles, Grayson Rodriguez, if that one's something to monitor, honestly, because he didn't even take a physical. Of course, he was injured from last season. The Angels do need starting pitching. The Astros, I think they could have looked at him, but a physical is very important. And of course, you saw with the physical with David Weiss, he still got to pass his physical and be able to go. Mets, they always got some pitching in their in their farm and their rotation. Griffin Canning's one name that's up there. Of course, Senga, I don't think is going to go anywhere. I think he's going to stay with the Mets. Phillies, real quick with them. Aaron Nola had a really down season, but the Astros are not going to cover that contract. He recently just signed a contract extension with the Phils. That's going to 2030. He did have a down season last season, so I don't see Houston looking at him. Maybe a Taiwan Walker, but I don't feel comfortable for Houston getting Walker because you need a number 2 and number 3 guy. You honestly do. I'm sorry to say it, but you actually need a number 2 and number 3 starter in this rotation because Hunter Brown, who's going to be after Hunter Brown? We talked about it earlier in the show. Christian Javier could be the guy if he has a really great offseason and a really great throwing regimen. Maybe he does go back into that number 2 spot. However, I think there could be another pitcher out there via trade or via free agency that can take that spot a little bit better, I would say. So now we're talking about another outfielder. And the other outfielder is Jesús Sánchez. A lot of fans, social media, wanted to know why the Astros are going to tender that contract. And I believe if I'm just speculating here, I'm pretty sure front office coaches, what I mean by coaches, by the manager, Joe Spada, we're trying to figure out, well, who should we tender? Who should we not tender? And I'm pretty sure a name like Jesús Sánchez came up to them figuring out, because when we did our projecting of tendering and non-tendering the players, Angel and I kind of debated on, well, you could tender him and you could non-tender him. The way I saw it is because, and I had mentioned tender, and Angel had mentioned tender as well, is these hitting coaches that are coming in that the Astros just brought. They did away with Snitker. They did away with Cintron. Now you're bringing in Rodriguez and as well as Apasi. Hopefully I'm saying that name right. But anyway, you're bringing these hitting coaches in. You also bring another guy that's not going to be in the dugout, but he's also a hitting coach, got promoted as well. You get a new fresh. You get new fresh hitting coaches. You're starting fresh, a refresher on everything. Maybe there's some things that they saw with his swing that they can improve on. Though, you can see that, or you could take the other path of, you know what? We're tendering the contract, but if there's an interesting player in a trade with some of these teams that's going to give us a controllable starting pitcher that's MLB ready now, then that trade could be done. And Sanchez could be the guy dealt for then. And that was from Channel Rome. He had reported that the Astros have gotten interest from other clubs in a right fielder, Jesús Sánchez. So Sanchez does bring some value. He still got some arbitration years on him. It didn't really help his case for the second half of the season, like I was mentioning. Though kid is young, kid has some pop. I'm pretty sure he can still be a good defensive outfielder. However, he just needs to get them reps. I believe he could, but he just needs to get a little bit better in the outfield. So for Houston, your outfield depth as of right now is Jake Meyers, Zach Cole, Jacob Milton, Jesús Sánchez, Cam Smith. If you want to throw Yordan Alvarez, we can throw Yordan Alvarez in there. If you want to throw Jose Altuve, you can throw Altuve out there, as well as Zach DeZenzo. So you got 3 players more than likely that could be in and out of the outfield, with Altuve being at second base, Yordan Alvarez being in the DH role, as well as DeZenzo playing some infield. He could play first base as well. So that leaves you with 5 true outfielders in Smith, Sanchez, Cole, Melton, and Myers. Like I mentioned, I think Jake is the most tradable piece that's probably more than likely going to be talked about when they meet up in Orlando. That name could, and honestly could be dealt over there at the winter meetings or just a day after, just like the Kyle Tucker deal. And it just makes sense. You bring in young, fresh, energetic players, youth in Melton and Cole. You saw what they presented. And I think having them 2 guys out there compete is going to make them better as well. They present a lot of talent defensively and offensively. And as well, if we want to talk about speed as well, Cole is pretty quick, as well as Melton. You've seen the aggressiveness on the base paths when they go from first to third or second to home, try to challenge the outfielders to make a good throw. So that's why I'm saying Meyers had a great offensive season, almost 300. Really career highs in almost every category. If he doesn't get hurt, there's a lot of career highs on there. I think there was only one that he was able to do a better job on. So for Jake, I think there's an opportunity for Houston to go ahead and trade him. And like I mentioned in the article, if Houston could get a controllable major league starter in return, that's going to help them. So who can be that? Like I was mentioning, Joe Ryan, Pablo Lopez, Edward Cabrera, Mitch Keller, Sandy Alcantara, Freddie Peralta is another name that's interested out there. I did see on Bleacher Report too that there was they projected a trade of Brady Singer from the Cincinnati Reds, and you trade Jacob Melton over there. I don't think that was a bad idea, especially that you get a controllable starter in Singer. Singer really had a good second half of the season with the Reds, helped the Reds get into the postseason as well, not to mention. So them are some names. They're not the high names out there and the front end starters, the aces of the world. However, them are good fits to be a number 2 in a starting rotation. Mitch Keller, I think, is a great number 2. Edward Cabrera was that number 2 over there in Miami. He was number 1 when Alcantara was gone from rehabbing, as well as Yuri Perez. So them two guys automatically, to me, I think they fit right there and then in the number 2 and number 3 spot of that rotation. Freddie Peralta had a really great season. Got some Cy Young votes, not to mention. So he honestly is a ace. He's a sneaky ace, but could fit in a number 2 role. And then, of course, Pablo Lopez, Joe Ryan. Joe Ryan, a really great pitcher, number 1 ace in my opinion. Same goes for Pablo Lopez, an ace. Of course, Astros fans, if you were in attendance for Game 2 of the ALDS in 2023, you did see the way he had pitched in that game and that changeup, that fastball mix. It's really well. So getting those type of guys, those type of players in some deals, it's going to be difficult to compete with them other teams that present a better prospect package or MLB ready player now. But you never know. Houston could bring a really good package to the MLB winter meetings. Before we get into the draft pick assets, I will make a prediction here. Like I had mentioned, I've been preaching this the whole show. Jake Meyers will get dealt at the baseball winter meetings. If it's not going to be during the time over there, it's going to be maybe a day or 2 days after, just like the Kyle Tucker deal. So that is my prediction. Jake Meyers will get traded, and it will be for a starter. It's going to be for a starting pitcher because, like I mentioned, Houston right now with the money situation, I just do not think they want to be going over the CBT because they do not want to pay a percentage tax. That's just my opinion, my prediction. Jesús Sánchez could be an interesting one. Man, I think they hold him a little longer after the winter meetings. It just depends on what they do with Jake Meyers. I think Jake Meyers is going to be the first name that's going to be traded from the Astros roster. And after that, depending on what Houston is looking at, depending on what teams are gauging the interests of acquiring Sanchez and what the trades could possibly look like, Dana Brown's not going to put his full deck of cards in the middle. He's not going to put all the chips in the table. He's not going to just cash out just like that. He's going to wait for the great opportunity. And like I mentioned, I think, to me, prediction, Jake Meyers will get dealt at the MLB winter meetings. Jesús Sánchez is a number 2 guy after Meyers. If Meyers doesn't get dealt, Sanchez is going to be the number 1 guy that's probably going to get traded. So, interesting baseball winter meetings. Of course, we will be doing a podcast next week during the winter meetings. And it's going to be a fun one because during that time, I'm pretty sure there's going to be some more news coming out, some more speculation, some more rumors, all that great stuff. Like today, came from Robert Murray from Fansided that Kyle Tucker was seen at the Blue Jays facility in Florida. Of course, he's a Florida boy over there. Loves his Tampa Bay Lightning. If you're a hockey fan, you know who that is. I think it's a great fit, honestly. Kyle Tucker with the Toronto Blue Jays. You've seen the Blue Jays too since we're talking about money situation, they've kind of done the same thing what the Dodgers did. They did the same thing with the Otani contract. Well, that's what they did with this Cease contract. It's going to be interesting what they're going to do in these differentials when it comes to the money aspect of these contracts. So never know. I think that's my opinion too. I think Kyle Tucker does go to the Toronto Blue Jays and will go up to the 6 and visit Drake up in the north. And I think that's going to be a good squad. Anthony Santander, Kyle Tucker, Dalton Varsho. Of course, you got Miles Straw. That's going to be a good, Gold Glove center fielder right there. Bo Bichette, I think he stays as well. Vladdy Guerrero Jr., Andres Jimenez. They're going to run it back. Ernie Clement, Alejandro Kirk. That's a good squad. That's another squad that's probably going to be a favorite in the American League, as well as the Seattle Mariners. Seattle's going to still be up there, depending what New York does, the Yankees. Red Sox are going to be up there. I think they still got a good squad, just depending on if they could get a big free agent name like a Schwarber, Alonso, bring back Bregman on a different contract. It's going to be fun. Like I said, baseball winter meetings is the best time of the year if you are a baseball fan. You know what's also going to be happening at the winter meetings? It's going to be the MLB draft order, the lottery. And the Astros did get a boost in this MLB draft for next year since Hunter Brown did finish in the top 3 Cy Young voting. The Astros receive a second pick in next year's draft, and it will be at number 28. Not bad for Houston. Need that draft capital. You need enough picks because, like I mentioned, when the 2017 cheating scandal, that did hurt them, losing some draft picks. It was the first and second rounder for 2020 and 2021, if I'm not mistaken. And did lose some money in the international pool. They did gain some money as well for the international pool. And I think that's where Houston's bread and butter is, where they go out there and sign some of the best international free agents. When you think of the free agents from that international pool, Fernando Tatis Jr., Ronald Acuna Jr., Framber Valdez was another guy that was out there. Those are the hidden gems to me when it comes to finding talent in that draft, in the draft over there in the international free agent signings. Also, Houston could get a compensation pick after the 4th round if Framber Valdez signs with another team. So that's why I said these are some draft assets that the Astros desperately need so they can get better. Of course, you saw Xavier Nayans being the first guy off the board for Houston. And then they went out there and got Ethan Fry from LSU. I think them 2 picks were one of the most successful draft picks in that class, talking about baseball overall. Nayans is a really good player. Got drafted out of high school. Fry, I think, or Frey or Fry. If I'm fumbling, my mistake. If you're an LSU baseball fan, please let me know in the comments if I'm fumbling that name. Got some raw power. Could play the infield, could play the outfield. I think it's a great 2 additions. Of course, them 2 guys, if I'm not mistaken, I know Nayans is in the top 5 of the Astros farm system, and I think Ethan is in the top 10. So guys could be making some noise real quick if they could come through the farm just like that. You saw with Zach Cole. Zach Cole went from Corpus Christi to Sugar Land and with Houston in literally 1 year. So you never know what can happen. Last but not least, SCHN plus launches. What is SCHN? Well, that is Space City Home Network. And you want to add the plus, you got the plus. They announced Wednesday, which was today, the release of a direct-to-consumer streaming app, which is called, right there on the picture, SCHN Plus. And this, you don't even have to be an Astros fan. This helps baseball in meaningful ways. We don't have to see the blackouts. If you're an Astros fan and you're on the road, of course, you wanted to watch that game. You wanted to see that starting pitcher. You wanted to see that career milestone from Jose Altuve, Yordan Alvarez, Jamie Pena. You're missing out because you're on the road and you got to hear Robert Ford and Steve Sparks. Nothing against those guys because those guys do a fantastic job at their job. But maybe you're a visual person. You'd like to see it happen live on a TV or on an app. And sure enough, Houston being able to do that. Besides talking about the Astros right now, Rockets are the Rocket season's up. I mean, God, great basketball on Alperen Sengun, Kevin Durant, Amen Thompson. I mean, this team right here could go to the NBA Finals. They just need a point guard. Maybe they sign Chris Paul, maybe, or even trade for James Harden. But we're not going to talk about basketball because we're not a basketball podcast. However, this helps, like I said, this helps baseball and Houston fans in general because Houston is a baseball city. Houston is a football city. Houston is a basketball city. Houston sports fans love their teams. And now you're able to watch it on an app, and not to mention, too, it's on all iOS, which is Apple and Android devices, and Apple TV and Amazon Fire TV. So if you got an Amazon Fire Stick or you got Apple TV on one of your apps, you're able to watch it on those apps. Like the Apple, I don't know if that's an Apple Stick or that sounds funny just saying it. But you know how Roku has the whole thing, the Fire Stick as well. I know Apple does have it too. I just don't know what it's called. But being able to watch that, you don't have to have it on. You don't have to buy Fubo TV. You don't have to go to, Direct TV. If you just really wanted Direct TV just to see the Astros games, now hey, you got Space City Home Network Plus, and not to mention $19.99 per month or $200 per year. If you do the $200 per year, you do the simple math, you save $40. $20 per month isn't really bad if you wanted to see the Astros from March all the way to September. And of course, $20 for that. If you're doing that for Netflix already, which that's a pretty penny. ESPN, you're seeing the technology, you're seeing everything switch from cable to streaming apps. And Houston finally, like I mentioned, they really needed this to come into to everything, and this helps them not just get the Texas and the whole city of Houston, but outside of Houston. I mean, you got Astros fans from everywhere. We're talking to Astros fans right now that could be listening from San Antonio, from Dallas to Austin, to Laredo, to El Paso, to Amarillo. All residents of the state of Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Oklahoma have the opportunity to buy this package and watch the Astros on the go or at home, like I mentioned with those apps, as well as New Mexico. Of course, Alex Bregman being from Albuquerque, and that helped Houston get a lot of Astro fans out there because of his hometown in Albuquerque. And of course, Spencer Urquidi too had played some ball there. And I found out mistaken too in that interview. If you haven't seen it, it's on our YouTube channel. I believe he is from Albuquerque, New Mexico. But back to that, New Mexico residents in certain counties can purchase the SCHN Plus. I just think it's awesome. You're being able to watch it on your phone, on the go. I mean, if you want to listen to the radio, you can still listen to the radio. But if you're a visual person like myself, I like to watch the games live. I do love hearing the calls from Robert Ford and Steve Sparks, but being able to see it live in person, of course, you will have Jeff Blum and you will still have Todd Callis and Julian Morales being able to talk throughout the game if you do watch it on the app. So this is awesome for Houston sports fans in general. The Texans can find a way to do it because they've been playing some great football as of late, taking down the Indianapolis Colts. That really helps them because the next game they got to go Sunday Night Football, Kansas City Chiefs. But what helps Houston is the Colts and the Jaguars do play on Sunday. One of them has to lose. It's going to help them on their standings. So that is the end of our show, man. I mean, we had a good crowd. Of course, this was a solo show tonight. Hopefully I get Angel and hopefully I get Stebby back for next week for the baseball winter meetings. We'll have to see because, like I had mentioned, it starts Monday. And I'll actually look it for y'all. I'll look for how long the baseball winter meetings are going to be. And I know it's going to be, I want to say it's Friday, but I don't think it's going to be. So it starts December 7th on a Monday, and it ends on Thursday, December 10th. So like I mentioned, what's going to happen at the winter meetings, you're going to have the draft lottery. You're going to have all the agents, players, all of that. They're going to be out there talking and figuring out what's the best way to trade, sign, Extension talk could be also another thing. Highly doubt, and this is my opinion out there, highly doubt that Hunter Brown will sign an extension this offseason. You never know. Could happen. But in my opinion, I just think Hunter Brown, especially when you got Scott Boras as your agent representing, as Jerry Payne is another guy that has him as the representation of Boras corporations. You saw that with Garrett Cole after the 2019 World Series, where that hat. Those two guys, I just do not think are gonna. They could possibly be. Don't rule that out. But I think maybe Pena more than Brown. I'm leaning towards that could be an extension done with Houston. Though you never know. You never know what can happen, especially these winter meetings. Crazy trades happen. You saw the crazy signings of Garrett Cole, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, and these are where the big bucks, the big names, come and get their signings done. We'll just have to see what happens. But if we do find anything, if there's a huge trade or a huge signing this week, more likely it's going to be next week because the winter meetings start at that time. But if it does happen on one of those days, if it happens on Monday, you're going to hear us on Monday. If it's Tuesday, you're going to hear us on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, etc., Friday, etc. We will break it down. We will be the first podcast to let you know. Of course, we got the other podcasts out there, Paulo's out there, as well as Locked on Astros. Hey, but we're going to be the first ones to tell you because when we get the news, we're going to be able to let you know. Coming from the reliable sources out there in Brian McTaggart, Chandler Rome, Matt Kawahara. Like I said, we're going to be the first ones out there to let you know that this player got traded, this player got signed, who's going to where, who's going to get signed. But if you like this video, a lot of people are giving it a little thumbs up. We appreciate that. If you're listening to this or not listening, but watching this on Twitter, a lot of our audience is coming from Twitter. We appreciate each and every single one of y'all sticking with us. Though, if you're on Twitter, make sure you go to that YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, hit that notification bell so you will not miss any interviews coming up. We're trying to get some interviews set up for this little part of December going into the next year in 2026. So be sure to hit that subscribe button so you won't miss any of these updated videos and as well as some content. And if you are on the road, if you are at your son or daughter's practice or the recitals, or you just want to hear us on your commute to work or coming back from home or, on your lunch break, because, sometimes you don't want to hear your coworkers talk to you. You maybe just want to throw on some earphones and listen to some Astros podcasts, some Astros baseball, some Astros rumors. Hey, we are there for you. So make sure you go out there, Apple Podcasts, Spotify Podcasts, wherever you get your podcasts. We are there. Make sure you hit that like, hit that ratings, the subscribes, the stars, everything like that. Give us some feedback, give us some comments. We appreciate each and every one of y'all in the comment section, as well as, social media. Like I said, shout out to Astros Knower, tweeting out what his podcast was for this year on Spotify, and we were on his rankings. That really honestly goes a long way for us because we do put in the time. We do looking for the research. We do, when we're on the field, we try to get these interviews set up. We try to get the information correctly so we can provide you and keep you up to date with all the Astros' latest moves and roster, the roster updates as well. So till then, y'all stay safe. I know in Houston, it is rainy and it is cold as hell, especially in the state of Texas, because it is December. The winter time is here, but 100% rain. If you're listening to this on Thursday morning, please be careful on the way to work and just be careful on your commute or traveling wherever you're going. Be safe. Have a great weekend, and we will talk to you next week when the baseball winter meetings are going on and see if any Astros moves or anything like that is going through. But till then, be careful out there, and we'll talk to y'all next week.